had 30 seconds to spare to make it back into the broadcast, Ravi. Like, it was so close. I was eating a delicious salmon.
You're truly outing yourself now.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be consistent, right? So anyway, we are now loaded into the first game of this series, and it is going to be in the bottom left-hand side, Asuna for Alpha X.
Yes. And up here on the top right-hand side of the map, we have the blue Protoss player from Team Super. He is Trigger, which you could say is a super trigger.
You could say that.
A super trigger.
One could definitely say that.
One could say that. You know what else is a super trigger for many people? A Forge First.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there. You could say that.
Yeah, this has to be expected.
Oh my god! This is so big! He throws out the gateway to block the normal cannon position. Oh my god, Trigger, you're actually... even though he misses the block on the 3-pylon wall, that's actually the funniest, most amazing thing I've seen today.
I mean, yeah, we talked about it. Asuna is a cheesy little Protoss. He's a cannon rusher. We talked about it in the segment. Obviously, Trigger will know what he's got up against. He will know to expect it. But the fact that he has also prepared for it in this manner, I mean, this is a blind hard counter. But the beauty of this blind hard counter is it's so blind that, you know, like it probably works because he's probably tried it in practice, but I have never seen it because you have to be really daring to do it.
Yeah, imagine doing this against like a 4-stalker opening or something. Like there are so many things that could have gone really, really poorly with this, or even just any kind of like other proxy. But well, this definitely does get a little bit funky now because he didn't actually, as much as I was complimenting and saying like this is such a cool, funny thing, this is not really working out so far because he loses a Zealot, and now he also is going to end up losing potentially that gateway on the low ground once the cannons don't have anything to fire at. So this, in a lot of ways, is not going well. In fact, that Stalker, I'm not sure if it makes it out in time.
It does barely, I think. Oh, no, the Chrono Boost is going to run out too. It is so close. It does make it out. And really important that Trigger does prioritize the Stalker in the main, right? Because that's the one that can actually defend the cannon rush further. Now, this Stalker is rallied inside, but it will surely rally to the other side as it comes closer to completion. So Trigger's going to have to readjust that rally point. But the important Stalker is up, and this has been delayed enough that I think the hold has worked in Trigger's favor. No high ground vision now for Asuna means that this Stalker has free reign up until the probe gains enough shields to expose itself to a couple of extra shots. But yeah, I think Trigger is in control of this game now.
Yeah, one of these Stalkers will take a lot of damage. It's not going to be picked off over there. I do think there's maybe an opportunity for Asuna if he can focus on the pylon that was low. I'm not sure if the other pylon is actually powering that low ground gateway, so he could have potentially halted a second Stalker from getting on out. But regardless, I think we are both in agreement. This is definitely not really panning out so far for Asuna. And, well, the counter proxy is going to be difficult for Asuna to deal with, to put things lightly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Asuna is trying to take an economic advantage and dropping a Nexus right now and getting ahead in that regard, but Trigger's kind of look to punish right now, so it should be near impossible for Asuna to hold this, and yeah, we're going to see it unfold now. I thought that second Stalker had to go around, or would have been better served going around, because it doesn't really add anything by going into the main. The main is already well defended, so he could have just been here and he could have prevented the first cannon and the shield battery from going up perhaps, but it's going to be adepts that are going to be bypassing all of that anyway for Trigger. I'm not sure that I'm the biggest fan of that, because now he's giving himself two different win conditions, one in hurting the economy and one with the army and the allocation of his resources into further production. So thinning himself out, but still in a commanding lead.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. I do like that he draws everything out of position, because he can do something like this and just runs forward to the Stalkers. And nice focus fire with the cannon on the weakened Stalkers over there, so he's able to actually kill a few more of those Stalkers with Trigger. But like, we all know how this story ends, cats. A Protoss with no work gate that is outnumbered in the number of Stalkers. This is not a good spot.
Yeah. And there's 5 Stalkers as well, so he can easily one-shot those probes. Immortals out now for Asuna, and commendations on him for finding the space to drop everything that he dropped, right? Like, he goes for the expansion, he goes for the tech, And unfortunately for him, if he had been given just a minute extra or something like that, it might have been enough to stabilize. But as it stands, with his force field and a number of stalkers, the Immortal will fall. Not the best target firing there, as Trigger probably thought that Immortal was already dead, but now we'll be able to close things out comfortably.
Yeah, had a little bit of a oh my gosh, Shinderu Nani moment.
Nani?
We thought he was already dead, but
Yeah,
at the end of the day, the Immortal does in fact die, and even the second Immortal is not really going to be able to salvage the situation. Because remember, not only is there going to be a massive army problem here for Asuna, it's also the fact that he's also lost so many workers that he's now down 10 workers. Trigger has not expanded, but that's not going to matter in a moment because Asuna is about to lose his natural. So
yeah, not sure what to make of the Stargate. Obviously, this game, you can make anything you want if you're Trigger. And I do think the Phoenix is the right choice as far as units from the Stargate to make, because it can lift up this Immortal, and there's so few units that it cannot be punished, basically. It cannot be killed while the lift is ongoing, and that just means you get to take it down for free, as we're going to see here. So the Phoenix is cool in that regard, but, it was a little bit of there was a little bit of a gap where if Asuna had managed to stabilize, all of a sudden you're giving your opponent a little bit of a gap in time where you don't have units because you, again, allocated resources into a Stargate and then a unit from the Stargate that has to cross the map, whereas otherwise you would have this this contingent of gateways and just units that you could have been outpouring with your 4 gates early on.
yeah, that's entirely fair. Well, regardless, Trigger's still going to have a nice advantage. Wouldn't it be cool if Phoenix could lift shield batteries? That actually would have been pretty cool.
That would be sick.
A different way to invalidate the shield battery, like take it out of the fight for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would see a lot of Phoenix for sure in PvP.
Oh yeah, that's actually true. It'd be cool too.
True.
Actually,
defensively.
Do you think pylons technically should power like air units, or like if there were aerial buildings, would they power them?
I don't know how the pylon works really. Like, do you know how the pylon works?
I don't know. I don't know that there is actually an explanation that is real world for how the pylon works.
It's a source of energy of some kind, but yeah, I don't know that there is an explanation that's explicit. I don't know how how it sources power, how it gathers energy, or
Stargates are floating, right? So I guess it does it's not just touching the ground, right? It's not like, we have our electrical
pylons are floating.
Huh?
Pylons are floating.
That's true, actually. Yeah, pylons are not touching the ground.
Mm-hmm.
If they were, then their spinning would, be creating like a gradual little drill into the ground.
Yeah, and in the intro of Legacy of the Void, you can clearly see. I mean, every building as it's being worked in, it's floating. So maybe even gateways are floating. We don't really know.
Have you ever looked underneath the gateway?
Seriously, yeah, I haven't. It does look like they aren't, though. And
yeah,
now
I'm pretty sure they're touching the ground.
Ravi, he's dead. Let's just, because there's gonna be someone in the chat. Like, there's always someone in the chat that's like, talk about the game. And it's like, okay, well, he's dead. He's been dead. He's gonna cross the map now and confirm that he's dead. All Trigger has to do is hold, and he has a ton of stuff to hold. So if you ever find yourself in the position that Asuna is, you're dead.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. The one thing I will say is that there is a Warp Prism over here for Asuna. But I think just if Trigger had not been making 4 shield batteries back at home and wasn't extremely prepared for the big all-in slash attack, I actually think there was like some micro potential with the double Immortals and everything here. The Trigger is just not going to let any of that happen. Lifts up one of the Immortals, annihilates this army for the most part. And
yeah, I mean, he doesn't even need the battery, right? Like, we talk about those extra 4 batteries, about his defensive position, potential battery overcharge. He doesn't need any of that. He's just that far ahead. And so he's going to close out this game. Good effort from Asuna. But Trigger to say he had his number is underselling it, Ravi, because that was a hard counter of the highest proportions. Very gutsy, very cool from Trigger.
Yeah, I mean, to say he had his number is not accurate. It's more like Asuna picked up the phone to prank dial pizza to Trigger's house, and Trigger was the one that answered instead of the pizza delivery man. Like, Trigger was just there 10 steps ahead of him. It was really, really tough for Asuna to make a whole lot happen.
Asuna called to prank order pizza.
Yeah.
and Trigger stole his credit card number instead and bought a bunch of his pizzas.
That's actually, I like that. I like that. Yeah, it's a little bit tough, but it's also like it's the result of Asuna having been hard countered before the game really even began. So it does kind of beg the question, like, does game number 2 actually look anything remotely like that? Because that game does not look anything close to that if Asuna was already hard committed to cannon rushing and then falling immediately behind by the fact that he was trying to make this cannon rush work.
And that is so painful if you're Asuna, because I mean, cannon rush in PvP, Ravi, is viable. It is the only matchup in which it is viable, I think, at a decent level, right? Like, let's not talk about the highest level of play, because at that point it's very difficult to make a cannon rush work. There's only so much that you can do, but there's little room for error. And so in this kind of like NA matches and stuff like that, like, you know, if someone messes up a little bit, you can kind of either make it work or play out of your position. And Asuna is definitely looking for that. But now, will he try again? Because that's gotta be his ace in the hole, and maybe his whole entire plan for the series looks like he's instead, as I guess we should do, interest in the bottom left-hand side. It's gonna be Trigger about to get 4-gate proxied, most likely.
And over here in the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have the red Protoss player. It is Asuna, who is also getting scouted immediately.
As he drops his first pylon out of the map.
This is actually amazing. Asuna tried to go from like ordering the pizza that he is like, okay, how can I get revenge on this person? And like tries to somehow find some other way to prank Trigger, goes to buy like toilet paper, and Trigger is actually sitting and the one selling the toilet paper.
Oh, this is so sad. This is so brutal. This could be an attempt at a forge from this position. I mean, Trigger obviously knows exactly what's coming, but he did take the low ground gateways here, so he will double gateway to match Asuna. Asuna at this point, I think, has to probably drop a forge and try to counter rush or something like that. He's definitely gonna make 2 zealots out of this, but yeah, needs a little bit more than that, because he's gonna be matched on that regard. And yeah, it looks like did he cancel his own pylon there?
I missed who was canceling what. It's hard to tell who's making what until the buildings come up.
Yeah, I think that should have been, that was Asuna, and I mean, at the very least, he's going to need a bunch of shield batteries here. That is, I guess, one of the more common follow-ups from this, but Trigger is looking pretty great, man. He's already dropped his 3rd gateway and his cyber core. His first zealot is going to spawn outside, so that's a tiny bit concerning, as there's going to be 2 zealots on the side of Asuna that can answer it. Okay, Trigger does reposition or re-rally his gateway. I think that's the more sensible choice here.
Yeah, gonna go after the gateway. It looks like Asuna is. I almost wouldn't have hated if he just went after the cyber core. Just, I guess going for the gateway does make some sense. Like, you're gonna at least reduce some of the unit production, which is nice. Yeah. I mean, it's a tough spot no matter what, pretty much. But
this is so difficult. Yeah, I mean, your opponent just scouted you the entire way through. Now Trigger has adepts, which are going to be pretty good against zealots. They will do a little bit of extra damage, and he didn't even need to put it outside of the wall, but what he wants to do is force out defenses and force out investments defensively from the side of Asuna. If Asuna doesn't react, then he's just going to get away with murder. But this is getting a little bit out of control, Ravi. This zealot cannot afford to get surrounded, actually. And yeah, maybe that adept should have stayed back. Asuna could turn this around in spite of Trigger being completely prepared for it, seemingly.
Trigger doesn't actually have almost anything right now. Like, he's dealing with 4 zealots, but he's also only got a single adept back at home. There's a pylon going up inside, or that's already up inside of his main base, and Trigger was trying to do some damage on the other side of the map with a single adept, but the shield battery is just delaying the damage so much. Trigger, I think he might have underestimated this now.
Yeah, I mean, Asuna continued to commit, which maybe Trigger wasn't expecting. There's still a battery overcharge that can be used to shield these probes a little bit more consistently. I would love to see that. There it goes. And yeah, I think that second adept would have done wonders on the other side of the wall, whereas here it's eventually going to start doing damage. Now starting to take down probes, and there isn't a shield battery available, so Asuna is still in a little bit of trouble. And this warp gate is actually going to finish, which is huge still for Trigger. So Trigger might be able to recover here, Ravi. This has been a difficult game, maybe more so than it needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, he is still doing additional damage, but it's also worth keeping in mind that Warp Gate's about to finish here for Asuna as well. So he now has the option to warp in offensively or also just warp in a single unit defensively to deal with that single Adept. Target fire is down one of the shield batteries. I don't like that decision. I feel like he should know there's more shield batteries behind it.
Yeah, there's a lot of shield batteries behind it. Well, he has exhausted most of the shield battery energy now, but he has only 2 stalkers remaining. And at this point, it's all triggered now, Ravi. This was scary though from his perspective. I think that Asuna could have even found a way to transition. I think after just taking down all the buildings on the low ground, forcing the shield batteries here, maybe just recall, defend, and expand like he tried to do last game or something of the likes.
Oh no, he's putting himself in the corner.
Yeah.
Well, Cats, it was a valiant effort. Trigger does end up winning in the end. There looked like a moment